Hello, this is saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is A Conversation in Jazz, where we are promoting jazz through telling the stories. Our guest today is the remarkable, prodigious pianist and genius, Mr. Dwayne Adell. We ask you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so we can let you know when we are posting another video or going live. We also ask you to donate to our Cash App in order to support the channel and help us to produce future videos. Our Cash App is $Jazzology 101. That's $Jazzology 101. Enjoy the video. Hi, I'm saxophonist Antonio Parker, and this is A Conversation in Jazz. Our guest today is not only a musical prodigy, but he is also a genius in the truest sense of the word. He has been called the modern-day Art Tatum, and his brilliance as a pianist has also been associated with the likes of the great Oscar Peterson. His genius is not only limited to music, but he is also a self-taught physicist and biologist, focusing on aspects and the effects of sound and color. Please welcome my good brother, the one and only Mr. Dwayne Adell.
I'm glad to be here, Antonio.
Oh, my brother, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
Man,
Doing great. Glad
it's
to
an
meet your
honor.
audience.
Yes, it's an honor, man, to be able to not only to see you, and but to actually be able to interview you.
Sure.
We're
sure.
going to talk about some things. Now, before we get started, the first time I heard you play, I think it was at one of the big UDC, the big band.
Right.
What's it called, the big band?
Right. My first jazz experience is right.
Yeah, and you were playing Caravan with the UDC big band.
Right.
And it was like, it was just something special about you. I said, it blew me away.
Right.
But that's the first time I met you. Do you remember when we met?
I absolutely remember.
Really?
I do remember, yeah. And, when we met, I could tell that there was a certain life there that you already had inside of you.
Wow.
Before I even heard you play.
Wow.
I was like, there's a certain life about him. So I already had a feeling that you could play.
Oh, wow.
Just based out of the humanity of characteristics that I was observing.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Yeah.
In the way that you presented yourself.
Oh, wow.
So.
Oh, well, thank you for letting me know that.
Oh no, for sure. I mean, it was very obvious, and it was certainly a pleasure to meet you.
Yes.
And I've always felt the same way.
Yeah.
Ever since, because you're just so consistent in terms of who you are, and that comes out in the playing. It's that ability, not only the ability to evolve and to grow, but also the desire to commit oneself to certain standards that would continually enable a person to, constantly elevate.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Well, this is called A Conversation in Jazz.
No doubt.
And
right.
With a cat of your caliber, we're going to go into some different areas.
Oh, for sure.
But
for sure.
what we do here is...
It's jazzy.
Yeah. We get to know some things that maybe we may not know, and I call it the story behind the story.
Sure. Sure.
And my first question is, how would you describe yourself?
Okay.
In other words, who is Dwayne Adell?
Okay, the story behind the story, the journalism behind the journalism, the exposition behind the exposition would be. I would say that I'm a person that I love life. I'm super passionate about so many things that I really enjoy, that I actually love in life, and a lot of this began for me with music.
Okay.
And music kind of put me in touch with this omnidirectional journey
Wow.
of life in general. And I was able to see so many things, so many valuable aspects of music that could, it was such a marvelous it was such a marvelous insight, if you will, to just begin to conceptualize where I was, what I was doing. Because when you're playing music, you begin to have more of an idea as to where you're located in time and so-called space, you know?
Wow.
So, I mean, it places you, that's the one thing that jazz makes a requirement. That's one of the prerequisites of jazz. You have to improvise every time out.
Yeah.
And so that, just being able to improvise, you have to know where you are in the middle of, you know, you could be doing many things. You could have this going. You could have this going. You could have this going, you know?
Yeah.
And then you start adding more and more rhythms. And so you have a polyrhythmic, cycle actually in motion. You know, the progression of that can actually take off in so many directions. And just to be conscious of where you are as it evolves while it's in motion gives you a much greater idea, a much greater sensory awareness and or idea as to where you are located, not just with respect to music, but it gives you a sense of a closer observation of what the human condition is more fundamentally and more fundaphysically, you know, more fundaspiritually, or even more so than spirit, I'd use the word essentially.
Okay.
And I mean essence. So I'm saying essentially with a C.
Okay.
Not a T.
Gotcha.
So funda essentially, I would say that it brings you closer to the nature of that universality and just how important it is to continually kind of just grow with that process.
No doubt. Now, is it okay to ask you where you're originally from?
Yes, I'm originally from, I was born in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
And then I also lived in New York City. I've also lived in Pennsylvania and so on.
Okay. Now, what was it like growing up? Did you grow up in New York? Or did you grow up in different places?
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty much.
Yeah. So what was it like growing up for you? Like, how was your...
Yes, it was.
Because we're going to get into, like, you're unique. We all are unique.
What went into what?
But, yeah,
what fueled the uniqueness? What fueled the uniqueness for me was just the excitement of socializing with people, because at that time I was kind of to myself.
Gotcha.
You know, but I was still interactive, you know, somewhat. But, you know, being in New York, you never knew what you were going to encounter. You know, you might encounter somebody that has a special ability with something that you just wouldn't expect. And so when I looked at it from that perspective, I said, man, this is just, it's so amazing. So I was, you know, my worldview at that point was like, oh man, maybe every place is like this, you know?
Okay.
But I quickly realized it wasn't when I began to travel. But just being able to be around other people and having their input, and probably another aspect or characteristic that I found to be unique, that was something that I could, you know, that was, you could say it actually had an influence, is because it's so diverse.
Liverse?
Yeah.
Not diverse, say liverse.
The liversity.
Yeah, liversity.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we'll go with that. It was the diversity of people coming from different cultures is so strong. And so the population density, the population diversity density, or the population liversity density per square kilometer in New York is probably higher in that particular area than any other place in the world. Because when you see that type of population anywhere else, it could be China, it could be India, wherever, you know, or Africa. You're dealing for the most part with homogenous populations. But in New York, you know, so many different cultures.
Yeah.
You know,
I love New York.
You have something that's slightly reminiscent of that in Washington, but it's not as free artistically. I mean, you don't see that level of variation.
Gotcha.
In the artistic world or the artistic domain. Yeah.
Now, you have this incredible gift Now, I mean, when we say genius, that word gets thrown around,
Right.
quite,
Right.
but you are literally like a genius in the sense of like you have these incredible gifts. You have like photographic memory, of course, perfect pitch, and and just from us talking, you say the universe actually brings you understanding and knowledge and this sort of thing, right? Now, when did this gift become apparent to you and others?
It became apparent to me when I realized that not only did I have, was I able to deal with information insofar as storage, insofar as the memory and so forth, but
Even as a kid?
yeah, even I was aware. At that point, it was just more like an enjoyment, something that gave me it was something that I enjoyed, but also, again, it's not just about the storage, but when I began to really realize it was when I was able to process what it was that I was storing.
Wow.
And began to synthesize that information. And so that, many other things could actually take place with that information. I could begin to innovate, I could begin to improvise and extemporize and increase the sonic vernacular of my acoustic aura, so to speak.
Did other people see this in you as a young person?
Sure.
Really?
Sure. There were other people that were aware.
Okay.
I think one thing that I would love to mention is that in the church that I went to, we had different groups, different bands, and some of the bands, they were trying to fit in with what was obviously occurring here in America at the time, trying to be proper and sing, with a certain voice, like if somebody's doing Handel's Messiah, which is also, we'll deal with that from another point of perspective at some point. Because I'm on Handel's Messiah, a soulful celebration that was recorded with a number of people. Take Six was on it. I think Al Jarreau.
Really? You were on that?
Tremaine Hawkins. Yes, I'm on it.
You playing?
Yeah, where it says a partial history of black music. I'm actually on the beginning parts of that. They wanted me to hear a small section of the orchestration and then reproduce that pianistically. And that's what I did.
Wow.
And then so that was something. But again, they were taking this standard approach to Handel's Messiah, like in the way that they would sing, the stylistic approach that they would use to sing their songs was like that. And so we had bands like that. We had other groups, bands or groups, that would kind of vary. But there was another group that was a gospel group. And so what I had a habit of doing is, going and speaking and talking with some of the individuals from each of the groups. And when I would speak or talk to them, some of the other people were like, they would only talk about certain things and, like, yes, this is what it should be. And I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting, but I'm not really feeling this, in the way that I would like. So finally, I would talk to people in the gospel, and their personalities were so flowing,
Yeah.
It was flowing. It was creative. It was full of joy, and they could sing better than all of the other people that were trying to train themselves to sing a certain way.
Yeah.
They couldn't project. They didn't have the natural.
Yeah.
They didn't have a certain type of intellectual mobility.
Gotcha.
That could be used to kind of grace their conversations in a pleasingly evolving way.
Yeah.
But the people in a gospel group, when I spoke with them, it was just, you could get into details and they were comfortable. They were very into, the inquiry, my line of inquiry, the questions that I had for them, in terms of this feeling, because you could feel it. And the pianist, you could feel the pianist when he played.
Wow.
Whereas other pianists that were playing, I was not really too attracted to it.
Gotcha.
But, and that's not to negate them, because theirs is a contribution that heightened other people's experiences, of course, so I'm all about the diversity of various experiences. But what I'm saying is that with this one pianist, he would play and you could feel it. And when the group sang, you could feel it just felt more natural. It was something that was more natural about they were not trying to fit in. You know, they were strong in their own individuality.
Yeah.
And they were also strong in their cultural, social, historical approach to things.
Gotcha.
And without them even stating the fact that they had certain things in common, you could kind of feel the unification of that commonness.
Wow.
In the social interaction that I had with each one of them individually at different times. So.
Wow. So you came up in a church?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't.
You wasn't.
Yeah.
You wasn't a holy roller?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't. The only thing I liked, you know, like when I knew that the gospel choir was going to be singing, you know, I was up before my parents.
Oh, you did like the music?
Yeah, I like the gospel.
Yeah,
I like the gospel, and I still to this day I still enjoy it, even though you know they're singing about things that are, you know, one could say philosophically represents a different view from what I would espouse, you know. But I still am appreciative of people of different belief systems that, you know, if as long as a person feels like they're deriving value out of it, you know, that I'm not questioning their integrity of their own individual interpretations and perceptions and projections of however that is. But my thing is, you know, I felt that, you know, I was kind of at odds with some of the information.
Yeah. A lot of times, just as kids that are gifted, much like yourself, can feel out of place. You know, because, you know, or people, they may not understand you. Did you feel as a kid coming up? Did you feel out of place?
I didn't really feel out of place. I felt in place.
You felt in place?
I felt in place, but the whole aspect of feeling out of place actually came because conceptually, everybody's kind of challenged.
Okay.
You know, in the sense, because like, you know, you could say like, not everybody's experience was the same because you had some cultures that were already here in America, you know, like what they refer to as the Olmec culture. And, you know, they were already here even before the Mayan culture and so on. That's been documented. But you have others that came from a slave experience. You know, you have certain Indians that were already here and this kind of thing, but you have others that came from the slave experience and so on. And so in the midst of all of this confusion and vulnerability in being susceptible to the influences of another culture's approach to science, another culture's approach to religion, you know, and so on. In the midst of all of this stood the clarity of jazz as I came to know it when I came to DC, and I began to understand more about, you know, what was really going on when I had joined the band of UDC that was led by the great Calvin Jones.
And we're going to talk about that. Now, how did you get acclimated to music? I mean, what kind of music did you listen to coming up? Like, we're going to get to the jazz.
Right.
But before we get to that, I want to know, what were you...
What I was listening to was pop music.
Pop, okay.
Yeah, I love pop music.
Michael Jackson?
Yeah, I heard him, but the band, the people that I attracted to off the top was Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Okay.
You know.
You felt that music deeply?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, because their lyrics were more focused, and at the same time just very creative.
Wow.
Yes.
Now,
and
what was your first musical instrument
that I ever played?
Yeah.
It would be the piano.
Piano.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I remember you telling me a story.
Yes.
That the way you started playing piano was, I think you was visiting an uncle or something.
My grandmother.
Your grandmother.
My grandparents.
Your grandparents, okay.
Yes.
And they happened to have a piano, and you sat down and just start playing.
Yes.
And your parents looked back and was like...
Yeah, they were surprised. They were surprised because, see, I didn't have any training. And so they're wondering at the same time, like, how's this happening? He can do this on his own.
So you sat down at the piano.
Oh, yeah.
And the first time you played the piano, you was able to play piano.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right.
How?
And nobody was there. And see, I was doing a spiritual that I heard in church.
Okay.
and it was let's just say it was a spiritual.
Okay.
And so I did that, and then I started doing some other things and experimenting. And when I did it, it felt like I had entered another reality.
Wow.
Like I had entered like something that gave me a different feel for everything that was around me. It was not just me playing the instrument. It was like something that was environmental.
Wow. So you intuitively knew, your fingers intuitively knew where to go.
Yes, I intuitively knew where to go, and I intuitively knew the sound that I was hearing. But when it activated that sound, it was also a feeling like that I could feel, from here, like here all the way up in my shoulders and my head, my hair, and everything. So
now, we as musicians, a lot of time, it's a physical thing that we deal with when you got to play up tempo, and man, you known for those like lightning fast chops and all that. How did you develop the muscular coordination to do what you do? I mean, you didn't go through no handing exercises and all that stuff, did you?
What I did was I basically listened, but I listened with a great deal of concentration.
Okay.
But that concentration is very easy. It was easy for me to concentrate. Concentration was something that was very easy for me.
Even when there was a lot of like hard or difficult information.
Yeah, because you're more focused at that point. You're more focused on the emotions. Like sometimes people say the emotions or being emotional is, sometimes people would present that as weakness or in the way that people approach sometimes. But that's only one side of it. Gotcha. The other thing is, because when you're experiencing deeper and deeper states of reality, those emotions play an incredibly important role. As long as you're not biased and they're free to experience the nature of the creativity of those emotions at the level where because the emotions is basically where you're appreciating. My appreciation of what I was hearing was so strong and so vital and so organic and so indigenous.
Wow.
And so pure and so intrinsic and so inherent that since the appreciation was at such a high level, and my emotions were so high and they were being excited and through my appreciation of it, the density of those moments were so vast.
That's heavy.
The density of those moments were so vast.
Wow.
In such a very short amount of time.
Wow.
That, it's almost like you could experience, like you felt like you were experiencing trillions of years, like in 5 minutes.
Wow.
From the information, because you could feel it so vitally. You could feel it with so much conviction.
Yeah.
So
it reminds me when I dream. Sometimes, I have the wildest dreams. And in that state, there's no limit. Sometimes I'm flying. It's no limit. It's like I'm in a dream state, man, and I can see people who I never met, but I'm talking to them like I knew them for 100 years, and it's like it's another reality.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's a level of familiarity that actually transcends.
Yeah.
Anything that because normally we would say, oh, it takes time to do this, to do that. But when you encounter something, or when you meet someone for the first time, and everything is just flowing, it is very much like that. Yeah. But I'm saying that those types of experiences were not meant to be relegated only to like the meeting of someone. It can happen in anything. It can happen in chemistry, it can happen in mathematics, it can happen in physics, it can happen in genetics, it can happen in epigenetics, it can happen in astronomy, it can happen in astrology, it can happen in so many different levels.
Yeah. And we're gonna get to a couple of those.
Yeah, no worries.
But that moment that you sat down and played the piano, you said your grandparents, did you develop an affinity for the piano?
The affinity was there. It wasn't like it had to. It wasn't like it. The affinity was already. it was just like I was tapping into a stream that was already moving.
Wow.
Yeah, and see, from that standpoint, you realize that certain things, when you approach it, it's not a matter of mechanical force per se. You know,
Wow.
it was really more of a matter. It was really more of a matter of, it's almost like that game that they play. You see, children play this game, double dutch, I think they call it when they do it with the ropes.
Yeah.
And so you have to take your time. You have to watch.
Yeah.
Before you jump in.
Yeah.
Because you have to really get the rhythm.
Yeah.
Or some sense of where it is.
Yeah.
And you're saying, okay, based on what that metric is, I got to really feel that metric. So that, you can't just force yourself into it.
Gotcha.
Because if you're trying to Rambo your way into it.
Yeah. Ain't gonna happen.
Right. It's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's just gone. But once you allow for yourself to just deal with it, then once you get in, you can start to direct what's actually happening in that process.
Wow.
So reality is very similar. See, because we have a lot of energy, there's a lot of ethereal energy around us that we can tap into. There's a lot of energy around us that we can tap into.
Wow.
And that is, and all we have, there's a stream that's already there. And so this is what I felt was happening in the jazz when I eventually got into the jazz.
Yeah.
And but going back to that moment I felt like, again, I was tapping into a stream that was already there. So by tapping into that stream, all I had to do was step into it, and just, you could float.
Yeah.
Because some people, there might be a current, and so all you have to do is put up a sail and, not much effort, and you're gone.
Yeah.
But other people, they don't know that route.
Uh-huh.
So they say, let's do it the hard way.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So what I'm saying is, I found something that was similar to that, analogously.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't say, I don't know if this analogy is as strict as I like it. I wouldn't say that it's grid strict, but it's definitely strict enough
Okay.
to say that this is, found a stream that was there. And because of that, I was tapping into a momentum. So I was tapping into something that I felt was cultural.
Gotcha.
And because it was cultural, it had a history behind it. And because it had a history behind it, it had a momentum behind it.
Wow.
And with that momentum, that's what I mean. I was tapping into something that was already there and coming out of it from the standpoint of the spiritual, the so-called spiritual, which is what I would call essential, with a C, and I would say, essence.
Yeah.
The essential, not spiritual. For me, that's what I like to use. But I looked at this and I said, this is interesting, because as lightly as it might seem, that could very well have been the locomotive. That could very well have been that very well could have been the live namic that put me in the right path, because
The live namic.
Yes, those live namics, because the
As opposed to dynamics.
yes. I'm glad that you're making the audience aware of that. Definitely. And and I'm also glad to meet your audience as well. But when I looked at that, I was already tapping into a cultural well, because I was dealing with a music that's coming from us.
Gotcha. No doubt.
So right there, conceptually and energetically, in physical terms, in real time, I was tapping into a cultural stream.
Wow. That's heavy.
That put me at another place in time,
Yeah.
in space, or so-called space,
Yeah.
that allowed me to engage further, to deal, to see, to kind of gain somewhat of a feel. Because once I got in, because it's like you have to give of yourself to get there.
Wow. That's heavy.
So once you give of yourself to get there, you're so in tune with the emotional content of it, and that when you tap into the essence of it, what people would call spirit, you're actually tapping into the logic of what that person, or what it is that's the formulas that guide that person's logic.
Wow. Yeah.
So, because some people would say, let's listen to things in isolation. Let's listen to that thing. Did you hear that part? And they'll listen to that part. But if you're tapping into the whole essence of it, then you'll be hearing everything.
No doubt.
So you'll hear it more contextually. And so you'll hear it this way from a sensory perspective. And your memory will actually process that in the way that it stores it. And it will also, and of course, we also have the ability to process that and extemporize. So what put me on a new path, to get to the original question that you asked, and that is, when I really knew, was when I was coming up with things. So when I started creating, when I began improvising, and I knew, I said, that's my strongest point right there.
Wow. Did you also sing coming up?
Yeah, I did sing.
Really?
I did sing, yes.
We would add a little Barry White.
What I say is, yeah, I sing a little bit, and at that point I would probably say I had some potential.
Oh, wow.
And perhaps I still do, because it's never too early or too late to do something. Those terms are relative, and those terms are kind of...
they put you in the box. They put people in the box.
It's just, it's all dependent on how people like to look at it relative to, because they look at things competitively. And if we, in certain situations that we encounter, we know that, if you're not the greatest at something, then everybody else that didn't win, they don't really have an identity. So in some cultures, it's almost like if you've engaged in a competition, their identity within that society is based on you winning a competition. If you don't win that competition, then essentially you don't have an identity.
Wow.
And so what I'm saying is, it's not really like that. We're not, we're not competitive based. We're uniquely based in the sense that each of us have our own identity. And so the competition is already, it's not a matter of that.
It's funny because
everybody is who they are, so everybody has their own identity.
Yeah. And in having your identity, and when you get out of that competitive mindset and identify, you get to a point of self-validation.
Yes.
Where you don't need others to validate you. You
Correct.
validate yourself and your ideas. That's what I really dig about you, man, because a lot of things that you validate. You didn't go to Webster, or you didn't go to the you didn't go to the school to be validated. You were self-validating in the things that you became aware of.
That's correct.
Yeah, and which is something that people need to get from this.
Right.
You did.
Right, because the intellectual mobility that I was referring to in the conversation when I was referring to some of the earlier groups that I was listening to, that same intellectual and emotional mobility does in fact take place in all of these other areas. In the sense that, especially when it comes to jazz, or especially when it comes to improvisation, which I was already doing when I was listening to the records of pop music, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and so on and so forth, listening to Stevie Wonder, but listening to really Earth, Wind, and Fire. So I used to listen to them quite a bit coming up. But my thing is, when we're improvising, that gives us a chance to actually define for ourselves. We're defining for ourselves in the absence of any peer pressure.
Wow.
Because we're enjoying what we're enjoying. And when we make changes and we alter things through our improvisation, through our own refinements, the refinements of our own additions and subtractions and divisions and multiplications.
Wow.
Those things are happening through our own integrations, through our own differentiations. Those things are happening.
No doubt.
And so once realizing that, you're actually focusing. You're actually learning to focus.
Yeah.
Without sitting there and going, or sitting in a certain position doing this, but actually there's a similar concept that's actually taking place in principle when we're improvising. We're focusing.
Wow.
And by focusing, by getting used to that, we were really beginning to understand how to concentrate.
Wow.
And we're learning how to define for ourselves in a way that's in strengthening. So regardless as to what someone else may think, as long as we're seeing a result that's being produced from the consequences of our interaction with nature, insofar as our ability to physiologically unify with our mental functioning and with our essential functioning, which people would call spiritual functioning, and just bringing a unification within all those processes, bringing light interacting with sound.
Yeah.
We're bringing those processes together at the conscious level, and when we improvise, we're actually defining those forces.
Wow, that's heavy, man. Now you have this thing that we call perfect pitch, as well as photographic memory. And there's a story about you that you entered as a teenager. You entered a piano competition.
Yes.
And you memorized a difficult classical piece by Rachmaninov.
Yeah.
And you actually went in there and won.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again,
explain that to us, man.
Okay, that was part of my earlier experiences. There was an aspect of that was part of my earlier experiences, because while I was listening to a lot of pop music, in that same library, I came across I came across an album CD that had piano on it. And so then I came across some others. So I was like, this is interesting. I was like, let me see what this is about. So I took it home, played it on a record player, and then I said, wow. I said, so what is this? And so I realized it said classical music. So there was a church that was like a block away. Like you would have to go down, and it was like one block over. And so it was a Catholic church, and they used to have the doors open, and the piano would be sitting open. So I would go over there, and after listening to it, the CD, I would basically go and just play everything that I had heard on the CD.
You heard it, you listened to it, and was able to recall it and play it?
Right. But see, I wasn't taking myself through all of these processes like, oh, I'm recalling it, I'm reproducing it, For me, it was just like something that I enjoyed, something that I loved.
Now, how did you... Oh, now, I'm just... man, it's amazing to me that you were able to... Now, we're talking about all this stuff that people, they go to school and study how to master this stuff.
Right.
You were able to listen to it, digest it, internalize it, and then play it. Was that your process?
My process was basically to just listen and enjoy it and love it, and just go and play it, and then add, just change things, like go where my mind was, what my mind was tapping into, using that as a sonic structure. Map.
And you went in a competition?
Yeah, I won a competition. Yeah, playing Rachmaninoff and some other things, But I've listened to Liszt. I've listened to Chopin, who I do like, and Bach, who I do like, and Rachmaninoff, Liszt, Ravel, and others that I heard. So I heard some of their music. It wasn't like a lot that I heard at that time. But that's what I was listening to at the time, and I had the ability to do it.
And this is a cat you had no formal training.
I didn't have any training at this point. So, before I went to UDC and dealt with Calvin Jones. So,
can you see how that for us people? No, I say that's amazing.
To me, it's like more of us need to tap into that, and that's where that whole concept is. In terms of what we were talking about earlier, being out of place. Can come. The whole concept of out of place actually comes only because we're actually becoming indoctrinated. I won't use the word educated. I'll say yes. We're being indoctrinated with another belief system.
Gotcha.
With another set of limits concerning what we can and cannot do.
Gotcha.
And so when we're taking that in, because we're taking that in, when somebody does come along that is, representative of what they used to be before they took on these other worldviews, they're looking at this individual like, oh, this individual is, wow, this is so so strange and so amazing, blah blah blah. But the same live dynamics actually exist in them. It exists in their own genetics. And if they were able to genetically recall or epigenetically recall where they come from, you know, and understand that this is what we're made up of, it would be normal.
Wow. And that's the same thing you think with perfect pitch?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So people look at me and they say, "Oh, he's so different. You're abnormal." And I'm looking at them. I'm like, "You all are abnormal. you all are just completely abnormal." You know. And why? Because we don't tap into the energy of our culture.
Okay.
You know, our culture is an energy resource.
Wow.
Just yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you.
Just like music. Music is an energy resource.
Have you met anyone like you?
I mean, I haven't. Can't say that I have. No.
So, are there any teachers that have coming up in that have a significant impact on you?
There was one teacher that I had. There was one teacher that I had in 6th grade. He realized that something was going on with me. He was doing math on the board, and I was taking it, and I was doing it mentally. You know, and so he would say, yeah, but you can't guess. You have to do it. You have to go through these steps to get to it. But when he got to the end of the step, he realized that it was the same thing that I said. So then he quickly went and did something else, and I gave him the answer to that again. And so he didn't say anything like you can't guess the second time. He was just like, and he got to the same thing that I said. And so this kept going on for a while, and nobody else in the class was answering. Wow. So that's when I recognized, that's when I knew, that day I went home and I was like, wow. Something that's going on with mathematics that, you know, that I really like.
Wow.
You know, because I could see, of course, I could see a lot of similarities between that and music.
Yeah.
You know, but just even in the way that we count.
Yeah.
You know, like some people might say, like I might do like this. And I might say, how many times did I do that?
3.
That's correct. You know, so if I were to, you know, let me see, if I were to go, how many times did I do it?
3.
That's correct. So we understand count, right? And so when we look at our experiences and we say, well, we know how to count. So we say, okay, we all come together and we say, how many times did I do it?
3.
Right. But see, what I did that time was I did it this time. The first one I did at a different time, which was 3. This one, I did that at a different time. So both were 3, but I did them at different times. Oh. But see, the discrepancy comes when we take and we do both at the same time. And now when I did like this,
yeah,
I actually did both at the same time.
Gotcha.
So now I actually did 6 and 3.
Wow.
So
Okay.
in other words, you know,
yeah,
I did this and did this. So we counted them individually. So this is 3, this is 3, because they occurred at different times. Mm-hmm. But when we had to count them at the same time, we still said 3. But the thing is, we're doing it, the answer is 2. It's like we did it 3 times, and we also did it 6 times, because now we're including this time with another time.
Wow, gotcha.
But because it happened at the same time, what happened to our ability to count what was going on?
Yeah, wow.
So I mean, just like this. So there's a different way to approach mathematics if we include time in that way. Just like if I say 8 minus 8, 8 minus 8 could be 12. And somebody might say, well, okay, Dwayne, you know, we know that you love mathematics and you're highly into it. You know, what's going on there? Because most people would say that this is 0, you know?
Exactly.
But I'm saying, if I'm saying 8 minus 8, I might be looking at it in terms of time. I might be saying, in my mind, 8 a.m. minus 8 p.m. Right?
Wow. I got you.
And we say, oh, this is equal to 12 or something like that.
Yeah. Got you.
You know?
Wow. Perspective matters.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So if you include time in any other, you know, and so in music, well, we don't even recognize that we're encountering these aspects all the time. Mm-hmm. You have the polyrhythms, you know. So you have all these different rhythms occurring at the same time. And you can start adding many other aspects of, you know, what's actually happening. So our ability to actually do these things at one time, you know, it's like wow. Yeah. So it's not just monorhythmic, it's also polyrhythmic.
Wow, yeah. So
to recognize that aspect, it's just like when you're dealing with the color black. You know, the color energy black is like black contains all the colors, right? So at the same time, as black, yes, it represents one color.
Yeah.
So that's the monochromatic aspect of it. But yet it contains all the colors, including the white.
That's the omni.
So it includes. So it's not only monochromatic, but it's also polychromatic
Poly. Okay.
at the same time.
Gotcha.
So it's monochromatic and polychromatic at the same time. So when one is conducting an analysis of black or black energy in the form of carbon or the color energy, it's probably best to look at it both to conduct that analysis or synthesis from the perspective of looking at it monochromatically and polychromatically.
Wow. Gotcha.
So when you look at that, you say, well, the same way that people had difficulty understanding the one God concept and the many God concept, those are actually related. It's like a theme and a variations.
Wow.
The theme would be like the one God concept, and the variations would be like the many God concept.
Wow. That's heavy.
You see, so blackness being it's monochromatic, that would be like the theme, the one God concept. Blackness being polychromatic would be like the variations,
Wow.
the many God concept.
Okay.
So it contains both of those aspects at the same time.
Wow. That's heavy.
Yeah.
Let's
And that gets into some other things, differentiation and integration. So it can be both of those too.
Gotcha.
Well, all of the same reasons. And you carry that further into biological functioning and so forth. Yeah.
Okay. I want to get back to talking about jazz.
Yes, of course.
Now, do you remember when you first heard jazz?
Yes.
What was that experience like?
That experience for me was it was just like it was very
And you know where it was?
yes, absolutely.
What was it?
When I heard, well, my experiences was when I heard Reuben Brown.
Reuben Brown, the great Reuben Brown, the late great Reuben Brown.
That's great.
Was
That's
he at
right.
the one step?
He was at the one step down, and he was playing with a bassist,
Keita Bet, was that Keita?
Steve Novosel.
Steve Novosel, okay.
He was playing with Steve that night. Sometimes he plays with different people. And so I heard him playing something. He was playing his own thing. And then after the set was over, I went to the piano. I started playing what I heard him doing. So he said, afterwards, after I walked back over to him, he said, bro, I know that you never heard that anywhere. I said, how do you know? He said, because I came up with that. He said, brother, you like a computer, So I was encouraged. I just took his description as encouragement to continue to stay on my path because
And that was
he
your
had an
first time
appreciation.
really hearing
Jazz, like
Wow.
And he was improvising. He had a different way because a lot of times when people deal with modern jazz, they talk about McCoy Tyner, and they speak about McCoy Tyner and Herbie Hancock, but I think that conversation should be expanded to include at least Kenny Kirkland, who was great. It should also be expanded to include the great Reuben Brown.
Yes, yeah.
Because he also had his own way.
No doubt.
He had his own way of processing information too.
Yeah.
And so he would listen to me play, and he said, Dwayne, when you play, he would just point to the sky, he would just, and that would be his description.
Wow.
The silence, that would be his description. It would be the silence. It would just point his hand up to the sky. And so, but see what I'm saying is, even though he stated that in that way, the volume of his silence was so high that I could experience the greater phases of the different parts of that definition, the components of that definition, and kind of process that in an encouraging way throughout the evolution of my continued experiences.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, let let me ask you, what brought you to DC?
What brought me here was I was originally going to do a recording, but that changed, and so I ended up staying here. And,
You was originally coming from New York to do a recording?
It wasn't from New York. I was actually in Florida at the time.
Oh, you was at Florida? Okay. All right.
Because I had been all over.
Yeah.
But so I went back. I came to DC, ready to do some recording, but I didn't agree with what was happening. So I said, let me start and do something else. So that's what happened.
Okay.
And I've been here ever since. And I said I wanted to continue to approach music. And so when I, of course, met Reuben and everybody, things changed dramatically.
Wow.
And then, of course, when I got into UDC,
Yeah. We're gonna
and
talk about
then
that.
they started,
Yeah, we're gonna get to UDC, but before we do, I want to go back to this jazz. Now, other than Reuben, what pianist has had the most significant impact on you?
Easily, I would say Art Tatum and Oscar Peterson.
Okay. Yes.
Art Tatum, Oscar Peterson, and I would also say, I would also include. I mean, there's some others that.
Were you into Bud Powell?
No, I actually wasn't.
Really?
I wasn't.
Wow.
No, I really wasn't. So, there's other people that I heard, like other instrumentalists, that I heard that I actually liked.
Wow.
And like I heard Charlie Parker. In the symmetry, the logic that he used, that he invented.
Yeah.
The language, and just the overwhelming volume of information that he invented, that he innovated, was something that I definitely appreciated. I knew that Bud was coming out of him, so I still have yet to develop a greater appreciation of Bud.
Gotcha.
But I definitely had a super appreciation of Charlie Parker because the lines that he was using actually fit his instrument.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. So did you hear
when you're
Bud?
translating that approach to piano, it seems like there's certain things that have to kind of change there, like Finest Newborn.
Yeah.
And now, who told me about him was Calvin Jones,
Okay.
because I believe Calvin Jones knew him as well.
Yeah. Yep.
Because some people call him Phineas, but Jones specifically said, no, that's Finest
Finest.
Jones. Finest Newborn. So
Okay.
so Finest basically had a way of playing it that I was like, okay, he's got a way of getting into it, the bop. Herbie Hancock also had a way of getting into the bop, the bebop. McCoy Tyner also had a way of getting into the bebop.
Yeah.
And for me, that was kind of like immediately apparent
Yeah.
and actual in the presentation of this reality, in the way that it manifested within
I'm
me.
surprised that Bud Powell didn't impact you.
I mean, there were certain aspects that did, but not immediately. So like other people.
Have you ever heard that tune, Tempest Fugit? Tempest Fugit. Have you heard that song before?
I've never heard that.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
let me
please.
send that to you. But that's,
Yeah, definitely.
check
I'd
that
like
out.
to hear it.
But,
But I mean,
I can hear you doing that.
Yeah, I heard. I mean, I've heard a lot of other tunes like Celia and other ones that I do like, and so I'm like, yeah, that's I like it.
Gotcha.
I also very much, just like I love the other people that I just mentioned, I also strongly appreciate Thelonious Monk.
Okay. Wow.
Because there's so many other directions that the music can be taken in,
Gotcha.
and he basically pointed to that largely in his compositions.
No doubt.
And some of the composers that I would like, I'd say from a compositional perspective, I do like Wayne Shorter.
Yes.
Compositionally.
Yes.
And others.
Yeah. No doubt.
And it just, to me, that just points in so many different directions.
No doubt.
Yes.
All right. So we're gonna talk about UDC. How'd you get to UDC?
I found out about UDC through Reuben Brown.
Okay.
Because Reuben Brown at that point, he had taken a personal interest in me.
Oh wow.
And that meant something very much to me, that that he did.
Uh-huh.
He took a personal interest. He said, man, he said, would you like to,
Yeah.
go up and check something? He said, there's somebody I'd like to introduce you to, man. He said, man, because, he said, you have some, what he told me, he said that he thought there's something phenomenal there. And he said he thought that a great deal could be brought to elephant upon it, as I say. Not brought to bear upon it, but brought to elephant upon it. Because we're dealing with great Africa, right?
Yeah.
And the great African people, right? Throughout the world. We're saying, and I'm saying that very respectfully, out of the more constructive contributions that we've made,
No doubt.
that have yet to be known, so that we can again begin to rehearse those same live dynamics and begin to incorporate them in our lives, so that we can begin to develop incredible or super credible skills. I don't want to say incredible, because incredible is like not credible, like incomplete is not complete, that kind of thing.
Got you.
So I don't want to say it's
Super
not
credible.
credible. Yes, I want to say it's super credible. But I want to be energetically consistent and linguistically consistent.
Yeah.
In some way. But I'm saying that, when he took me to meet Jones, he said, there's somebody there at school that, you'll be able to actually, blossom under him.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So that's how I got introduced to Calvin Jones. I got introduced to Calvin Jones through Reuben Brown.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
So at UDC, do you remember when you first met Mr. Jones?
Yes, absolutely. He was just really, really tremendously lively.
Yeah. No doubt.
And he loved giving to the students.
Yeah, no doubt.
And he understood our experiences. He was universal in the way that he approached everyone.
Yeah, no doubt.
But at the same time, he was entirely cognizant of the experiences that we were coming from constructively as black people.
Yeah.
And with a culture.
Yeah.
And I don't just want to say black people, but African. We call ourselves African American right now.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that he understood the experiences that most of us were coming from. And he took pride in having us develop.
No doubt.
Now this is when we're talking about blackness in a constructive sense. Not blackness as it would be associated with laziness.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. No doubt.
And just being a certain way to people.
Yeah.
But blackness as it applies to being constructive.
What was
and so he was very keen on seeing where you were coming from.
Yeah.
And so when he saw that where I was coming from in terms of what I could do, I could tell he kind of like looked like, hey.
I was just gonna ask you, what was his reaction? I'm sure you played for him.
Yeah.
What was his reaction?
His experience, like when he first heard me, he said he was like, God damn. He's like this man.
That's Mr. Jones.
He said, man, this guy's got a monster. I gotta develop him. So he would basically say to some other fellas, he said, I got a tiger coming in the band.
Yeah.
So but see, I'm gonna tame him. So
That's Mr.
So I said,
Jones.
okay, I'm a tiger and he's gonna tame me. Okay. So I said, okay. I was totally fine with his approach, and he was very, he was very raw with his approach at the time.
Yeah.
If you weren't with it, he would stop the band and say, like, what the hell are you doing? Like, what, you don't. He said, goddamn, you won't want to approach it like this. You want to approach it a certain way,
Yeah.
And so sometimes he would ask, like when he would come in prior to the rehearsals, he would ask different instrumentalists. He said, man, you ready? And some guys would be like, man, I think I'm ready. I think I'm going to do it, And he would ask somebody else. He said, yeah, well, conceptually, I'm coming along. So he'd ask me. Then he would ask me. He said, Juice, you ready? He said, are you ready? And I said, of course I'm ready. I said, I'm going to slam you today.
You said what?
I said I'm going to slam him.
Oh, wow.
And one time I said that to him. He said, man, he said, if you don't have it, I'm coming at you today. I'm really, really going to come at you.
Wow.
So I said, I'm ready. I'm going to burn you up. You know?
Yeah.
So we start playing, and so I would really be ready to go. And so when he saw that I was taking off with it, that's when I began to become more confident
Yeah.
in what I was doing in the field, domain of jazz.
Yes. Now, who was
Which
that?
was-
Who was at UDC when you were there? Do you remember some of the musicians that were in the band at that time?
Harold, there was a guy by the name of Harold that played trumpet.
Harold Little.
Harold, I believe that
Yeah,
that,
okay.
that
Yeah,
was
I
that was
think
him.
that
He
was
played
him.
trumpet,
Yeah.
wore glasses.
Yeah.
I remember him because I also felt that he had something.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
If he wanted to take it further.
Yeah.
And Kevin, a trombonist.
Oh, Kelvin.
Kelvin,
Kelvin.
the trombonist, yeah.
That's my man.
Melvin
Melvin Prince.
Prince,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was there. Ron on drums,
Ron Compton.
yes. And Bruce.
Bruce. Oh, yeah.
Bruce Williams,
Big Salad.
saxophonist.
Yeah, we call him Big Salad.
And so, yeah, we had a lot of people there.
Yeah.
And excuse me for not mentioning every name, but
Yeah.
Bruce, I was impressed with too because I thought that he had something for
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
saxophone.
Yeah.
Fish,
Yeah. Fish was there. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know, in honor of
The late.
Fish.
Yes. Yes, sir.
In honor of Fish, who's
Yeah.
who's transitioned. But of course, that brother, of course, he still lives through us.
No doubt.
And in terms of the influence that he brought to the music, he also progressed.
Yeah.
So those are some of the people that were there.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And it was
That
just-
experience really impacted you.
Oh, very much so, because
How about Miss Corey? Mom
Miss Corey was very she was always very pleasant.
Yes.
And she was always very accommodating in terms of, what she, because she was like definitely Jones'
Yeah.
assistant and sometimes henchman. Because it's like, okay, wait a second, what are you
Yeah.
doing there?
Yeah.
Because sometimes like she allowed me, because this is my experience listening to Art Tatum and Oscar Peter, and she'd give me a tape to listen to. And it had Art Tatum on one side, Oscar on the other. So I came back the next day playing it.
Wow.
And so when I heard them, I thought, okay, let's stride and play in solo while the big band is playing. But Jones was like, you got to comp. You got to comp. So he sat down, and I said, what do you mean comping? So he sat down, and he was like, like the band is playing, you got to do like that.
Yeah.
He wouldn't describe it. He would just say, you got to like that.
Yeah. Like.
So I said, okay, like this. And he would say, yeah, man, you got it. So then when the band started playing, then I started comping. He said, man, that's what I'm saying.
So you would hear the song down and then you have it?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Now, did Alan Johnson come after you? Okay. Do you remember when you met Alan Johnson?
Yes, I was the one that actually requested. I told him, because I met him in another location.
Okay.
So, I was playing and hearing me playing. So he was playing at the time. And at that time, he wasn't into jazz.
Okay.
He was, at
On the gospel.
He was he was at his embryonic stages,
Yeah,
beginning stages.
Yeah.
But when he was approaching it, I could hear something in it that let me know that okay, he could develop.
Yeah.
And so I told him, I said, you should definitely go over to meet Jones. I said, you'll develop. I said, because you could do this.
Wow.
And so he listened to me, and so when I turned around, he was there.
Beautiful.
At the school.
Yeah.
And he's since become the instructor there at the school.
No doubt.
So he went through the program.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was glad. So anybody that I saw that I felt had something, I'd try to, say, hey, go to UDC.
Yeah. Yeah.
But of course now they don't have Calvin Jones, there his experience, which was an incredible experience because
Yeah.
he really cared about the students. He really cared about us.
Yeah, no doubt.
And he would always tell me, he was like, man, you really have the ability. You have the ability of an Artatum and Oscar Peterson very easily.
Wow.
Just keep on. He said, man, I see it. He said, it's plain as day for me.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. I said, let me continue to deal with this, and look at my own sonic identity.
Beautiful.
And just continue to deal with my own set of refinements.
Yeah. And now let's talk about the DC scene. Do you remember your first gig?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
What was that like?
It was kind of amazing, and I love the experience because I love being able to play with the jazz trio.
What was it?
It was in a club, and we were playing. We were getting ready to play, and so I was really excited about my first experience in terms of what it would be like. And when we played, it was just so enlightening and endarkening.
Endarkening?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was it endarkening?
Well, it's just like the sun. The sun provides us with light. So I'm looking at that as an enlightening experience.
Okay.
But when we interact with the sun, we get darker.
Okay.
So it's we're taking in the light of the sun, enlightening. And when we take in the light of the sun, we get tan all the way to brown and black.
Okay.
So that's what I'm referring to as endarkening. So it's both an enlightening experience and a darkening experience. So you could basically say that that's the physical equivalent or the physical manifestation of the yin and yang.
Yeah. No
Is
doubt.
the expression of light and dark. And to be more specific about this analogy, if you look at like additive color mixing and subtractive color mixing, like sometimes when you're mixing different lights of different colors, you'll get white. But if you're mixing things like paints and so on and so forth, you get black. Well, it seems to me that one is referring to light and the other one is referring to mass.
Wow.
So involved in additive color mixing and subtractive color mixing is the yin and the yang, the white and the black. So you can see all, the lights of different colors, they come together, you get white light.
Wow.
But in the other form of color mixing, like if you're mixing paints and what have you, you're getting black. Well, when you're mixing things that have mass, it's coming out black. If you're mixing things that have light, they come out with a bright white light.
Okay.
And so this describes that yin and yang of the interaction of light with the mass, which a lot of people don't necessarily at the present moment really associate with additive color mixing and subtractive color mixing. Sometimes they look at it and they say, well, this is kind of a bit of a paradox here. The colors come together on one end, we get white. The colors come together on another end, we get black. But that's because one is mass and the other one is light based. So when the colors come together in a light form, you get white light.
Okay.
If they come together in mass form, like in paints or whatever, you get black. So it's basically describing to us, both the additive color mixing together with the subtractive color mixing is basically giving us an understanding of the interaction between light and mass.
Wow. That's heavy.
Yeah, light and mass. And as you know, you multiply those two things, you're going to come out with being able to calculate energy. When you say mass times the speed of light squared is going to give you the energy of whatever it is that you're considering. It could be the energy of the electron or what have you. So, but what I'm saying is, this is a more of a greater interpretation when you look at the additive color mixing and the subtractive color mixing, and you superimpose that conceptually over the yin and yang, and you say, well, what's going on there? And then you look at, and then you come to a greater awareness of the fact that, wait a second, this is really about an interaction of light together with mass.
Wow.
And I'm just seeking to further extemporize upon what it is that we're speaking of. We're talking about the interaction
Gotcha.
of, like, my ability to play. You're tapping into energy that's all around you.
Gotcha.
So it seems like it's random, but then here you are giving coherence to what seems like it's random energy around us. But yet, when we play, we're actually cohering what seems to be random experiences. So that's
Wow.
a different form of entropy.
That's everything.
And so if we were to tap more into that form of entropy, as far as the way we live, we could live a lot longer to the point of being infinite, because that's what it is. You know, we're dealing with melanin as a compound, right? And the main chemically active component of melanin as a compound is carbon as an element. So when you look at the constituents of melanin, 18 carbon atoms, 10 hydrogen atoms, 2 nitrogen atoms, 4 oxygen atoms, and you say, well, carbon is the main chemically active component of this miraculously phenomenal super compound that we call melanin.
Wow.
Because melanin as a compound contains all of the secrets to carbon as an element.
Wow.
And carbon is the basis. That's life as we know it, you know, because when we talk about organic life-based chemistry, we're talking about carbon-based life forms. Wow. And carbon in its naturally occurring form is black.
Okay.
And so when we look at the constituents of carbon, we're saying 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. So apparently the real 666 is life. It's life-based.
Wow.
When we look at black as a color energy, and we're no longer just addressing color on the basis of identification or aesthetic identification, you know, we're looking at it on the basis, we're looking at it functionally in terms of energy, which is what we're made up of.
Gotcha.
So when we interact with the sun, just like when we plug a phone in, we plug that phone in, the phone is being charged, and then it stores the energy. So likewise, when we go out and we take in the energy of the sun, we're actually storing that energy.
That's heavy.
So when we store the energy of the sun, we're getting darker.
Yeah.
So that storage is a form of memory.
Hence,
And we have the ability to process it
hence
because
the
we're
term
thinking about it.
endarkening.
Hence the term endarkening.
I got you.
And thanks for bringing it back to the very important theme
Yeah.
for which we provided some variations.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And that's what jazz is really all about.
Yeah. You have gone on, and I would say to lead your own trio, Blues Alley,
Yes.
Bohemian Caverns,
Yes.
and all this stuff.
Yes.
Who are some of the musicians that
I like to
you
play.
like to play with? Or
I like playing with Chris Fun on stand-up acoustic bass,
Uh-huh.
and Quincy Phillips on drums.
Yeah.
I like playing with Lee
Lee Pearson,
who's also great.
great drummer. Yeah.
And I mean, Quincy and Lee are great.
Yeah.
And they have their own individuality and their own creativity.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the order of magnitude of greatness is
Wow.
constantly evolving. And it's certainly the same for Chris Fun on stand-up acoustic bass. And I've also played with Amin Salim,
Yeah.
who's
No
also,
doubt.
you know, the order of magnitude when you speak about Chris and himself, you know, it's beautiful. So those are the ones that I have a preference for, because when I play with them, I feel that I'm playing with people that I can relate to on and off the stage. So when I break bread with people, you know, or when we're sharing our experiences, when we're sharing bread,
Gotcha.
you know,
Yeah, that's
and
real.
we're putting bread together.
Yes, sir. No doubt.
You know,
that's real talk.
we have a chance to build constructively.
Yes, sir.
And so when I'm on the stage with them and I'm going with what I'm feeling, I feel like I'm going with what I feel constructively.
Yeah.
Because I want to distinguish that.
Yeah.
In the same way that I distinguished myself younger by having these certain abilities with respect to perfect pitch, photographic memory, being able to create, extemporize, improvise, innovate, invent.
Yeah.
Because as a composer, we're really inventors.
Yeah.
Right?
No doubt.
So when you look on those CDs, like when I was looking on the CDs, when I had to be a part of the competition, on the CDs that I'm listening to, they're describing Bach as an inventor. You see what I'm saying? So when they say Bach inventions, that's because when we're actually composing music, we're actually inventing. So we're also inventors. And that term needs to be brought back into the music. That terminology needs to be reintroduced into what we do as improvising musicians.
No doubt.
Because it really gives validity. It gives a greater, it gives us the picture has been enlarged. While at the same time, the picture that we already have, we're actually giving greater resolution to.
Wow.
So by adding in the fact that, yes, we are inventors, we're basically adding in the number of pixels to increase the level of resolution to our experience of music making.
Beautiful. I remember, you remember HR 57?
Yes.
and I remember you and Eric Lewis,
Yeah.
Lou, and you guys would, I don't know, y'all would play back to back or sitting in or whatever, man, and then you guys would start playing chess.
Yeah.
You remember that time?
Yes.
Yeah. What's your relation? What was that experience like? Because Eric is another phenomenal.
Well, Eric is competitive, and he was just it's just like playing sports.
Yeah.
If you're in sports, you're gonna compete.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you're playing
Yeah.
things, you're like competing. So he was one that he's just a person that likes to talk.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. So I started talking too, So so basically I told him, I said, yeah, I'll do this. I'll do certain things on the musical end. So I did that. So he would do something, so I would do it, and then I would play something. And I knew that, and I would know later that he appreciated it because I could hear him incorporating that in a little bit of what he did.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, interesting, But at the same time, he has his own voice. I have my voice, and that's how I look at it. I look at all of us as having a way of enhancing what each other do.
Yeah.
The cutting sessions, as I know it, had to do with, if an argument had to be settled, if people didn't want to deal with the actual evidence, or as they would say, or as a scientist would say, if they don't want to deal with the results of the experiment, if they just want to carry on with their different theories, but not put it to the test of experiment, and then have it independently corroborated by different laboratories and see to it that it's repeatable, and then we contrast the results of the experiments with the two and subject to two theories to what's actually happening here to see which theory is right and which theory is wrong, or whether it actually incorporates some aspect of both.
Yeah.
You see, so the cutting competitions was the experimental aspect of it. If in fact anything was in doubt, or if somebody felt like something was so, it was a way of settling the argument.
Yeah. In any event, it was great for the audience because we loved it.
Right. But see my point.
We got to kind of witness just high levels of all the stuff you've been talking about.
Yes.
At this highest level, and then, but the cool thing is that you guys, after y'all done did all that, y'all can sit down. Y'all probably just as competitive playing chess.
Yeah. Well, I didn't. I wasn't playing it that long. I understand he had spent a lot of money.
Yeah.
Learning it and whatnot. So yeah, we could be.
Yeah.
We could be. So I'm not.
Yeah.
I
just remember that period, and it was for us. It was just like wow. It was a when you look at DC history and some of the because it's gone through changes, but this was part of our history on the scene in DC.
Yes.
And man, we got to at HR 57, which is no longer here. These are the type of moments that we've witnessed, just being either musicians or listeners, which is beautiful, man. And but I wanted to also ask you. I know you had a relationship with my man Vince Evans, the great pianist. You remember Vince Evans? Yeah. You guys. These guys really dug you, man, because Vince he's a genius in another kind of way, but I'm being in the middle of it, knowing both of you guys are like, wow, when I see it come together, I'm like a kid in a candy store.
Well, all of us have, each person has their own contribution.
No doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt.
And I mean, that's the beauty of the experience of being. The beauty of the experience is being able to make a contribution and share it and have people appreciate that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because like with me, medals and this kind of thing are fine, But I think that the best way I think the greatest way I feel appreciated is when somebody takes something that you've said and they're applying it in their lives systematically.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you have a group of people that want to honor you in this way and say, well, what do you think we should develop in, and what would be one of the ways that we can approach it?
Yeah.
Before it perhaps evolved. It's evolved even further. I would say certain things. I'll make certain suggestions, and then if they continue that out, sure, I'll accept that as a celebration to my contributions, and I would take that over getting a piece of metal.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
Have you ever met the great Andrew White? Andrew White, saxophone.
Yes, I've met him.
He's another one. So when I put all you guys, just y'all have some different stuff that is beyond for me, the norm. And I kind of look at you guys. Yeah. And he's another guy that has in his own way, his genius. And so, man, but it's beautiful to see that,
Yeah, I can appreciate him. I can appreciate him for producing what he's produced.
Yeah, he's
producing.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
At the same time, it's also fortunate.
Yeah.
See, we see two sides of it.
Oh wow. Okay.
We see two sides of it. Yeah, it gets into the jazz tune of yes and no. You know, so it's like a yes and no. So it's fortunate, but it's unfortunate that we lost him. But it's also fortunate that we had him, and that we also continue to have the contributions that he made.
Beautiful. So, I like that. I like that, man.
And so while he's still around giving us energy, we in turn give him form.
Wow. I want to talk about some stories, and I think you're going to be a cat man that cats talk about you. You may not know it.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna give you my story about you, and I got another story that I heard. I remember. I think it was at HR 57. I had my phone. It was one of them push button phones.
Yes.
And you said, and when you push it, you could hear the sound of each digit.
Right.
And so you said, give me your phone, and you listened to all the keys of my phone.
Right.
And then you gave it back to me and said, dial your number. I dialed my number, and you was able to tell me my number.
Yeah.
Yes. Man, that blew my mind, man. That was like, wow. That was another story, and I'm a paraphrasing.
Oh, go ahead.
Huh?
Yeah.
Alan Johnson told me this, that they had some quarters or something, and you can corroborate this. And each quarter had a particular date on it.
Yes.
And you were able to tell, I guess you turned your head and was able to tell what quarter it was by the sound. You were able to tell what dated quarter that was by the sound that each of those quarters had.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then they tried to trick you.
Right.
And I think they said, okay, we're gonna switch quarter. And then you was like, that quarter wasn't in it.
Yeah. I mean, because the tone was different.
Wow,
the tone was different, and because I knew what the tones of each one was, I was just like, okay, this lets me know, because what they were doing is, instead of dropping it on a floor that where it would ring, in a way, they were dropping it on a rug.
Wow.
So that was different from what I was doing. As a child, dropping it on the floor, you could hear it. Yeah. So they dropped it on the rug in the office. Wow. It was in Alan Johnson's office. So we dropped it on the rug. So I was able to hear it. So he was there, and Michael Price was there.
Wow.
Right.
That's beautiful, man.
So all of the people, so all of the people that we've spoken of have made contributions.
Beautiful.
And it's just wonderful to see everyone develop, and it's wonderful to constantly seek to express our appreciation to each other concerning our developments.
Beautiful, yes.
As well as how we can approach things economically and make things more feasible for ourselves economically,
no doubt,
globally.
Yes. I want to ask you: do you have a life philosophy that you live by? or musical philosophy or something? Do you that you can that we can you can privy to us?
Wow. Living life to its fullest is very simple. Just simply being able to experience every moment in greater and greater detail.
Heavy.
So that by experiencing a much greater appreciation of those moments, you are also enhancing your ability to be more emotionally sensitive to what's occurring in your environment, not just yourself as an individual or yourself as a musician or yourself based on any other occupation. As like I said, as an artist, as an improviser, as a creator, as an innovator, as an inventor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, anybody that's doing, performing in any other field, you just want to be able to experience it and know that there's no limit to how great those experiences can be.
Yes, no doubt.
We want to experience the height. We want to experience the zenith of all of those experiences.
Yes.
At the sensory physical level, and at the mental level, and at the essential level, what people would call spiritual, but I call it essential based on essence with a C. So I'm saying essential or essentiality with a C.
Heavy.
Because that really delves into other things that I think are profoundly significant in ways that could enhance our lives. Because if we learn to focus on that, then the mechanical aspects that follow, and that all can also come up right along with it, that can be concurrent, that can occur concurrently with what's actually taking place at that moment. It's like we're not really concerned about, do we have the muscles to do it? Do we have the what,
the technique?
Yeah, because in some ways, yes, this is muscle.
Yeah.
But really, the muscle is really how we think about it.
Gotcha.
How are we energizing those moments? How are we energizing our own biophysiology? How are we energizing that? And so it starts, it starts in different places, and we have the ability to process these experiences in a way where they're mutually reinforcing of one another.
Beautiful.
In an amplifying way.
Okay.
That would amplify it 1,000 times over, just like language.
Yeah.
Like I was sharing with you, why should I say, what are we doing this week? We're not weak. Are you weak? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, what are you doing this strong? There's 4 strongs in a month. There's 52 strongs in a year. I'm not going to say good morning to you because, we're not morning.
Yeah.
Like I say great sunrise to you, a great day or something, because we're not morning. And I'm saying these things are in the language.
No doubt.
So we're teaching each other great-ons. We're not teaching other less-ons or lessons.
Wow.
You see what I'm saying?
I love it.
And when you say, if somebody sneezes and somebody says bless you, I'm saying instead be great you. Because I'm not saying be less, I'm saying be great.
Wow.
And these types of
Wow.
things.
That's
because
heavy.
what I'm saying is the language that we're using is like a conductor. It has energy.
Yes.
And so every time we use it, that likewise could be used to mutually reinforce everything that we talk about just by referencing it in our daily normalized conversations. And it amplifies everything that we do 1,000 times over.
Beautiful.
Because it's already contained in the language. Just like great music, when you're dealing with great music, if it's great, it's already floating by itself. All you have to do is just, the current is already there.
Jump in the current, huh?
All you have to do is just jump in the current.
Wow.
And that's what our tradition is like in terms of black music or jazz, what people call jazz. Yeah.
Wow. One thing I'm very excited that you did, that you've done, was that you've recorded. your debut CD?
Yes.
Because sometimes we leave things to legend, stories that people say, which is cool. But it's nothing like hearing it from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
And you documented yourself. And that's why. But let's talk about your CD.
Yes, absolutely.
The title of your CD. Break that down to me. It's called "The Periodic Table of Tonal Elements."
Yes.
What a title.
Yes.
The Periodic Table of Tonal Elements.
Yes.
What is that all about?
Okay. The periodic table of tonal elements. I named it this because I was saying what happens if experiments were done on all the elements on the periodic table. And let's say we went up to 112 elements. We know that there's more, quite obviously, but at least definitely hypothetically in some cases. So again, experiment has to bear that out, right?
Yeah.
Or some form of evidence. But as I was saying, if we were to take each of those elements, how would they respond? How would each of them respond to sound of different frequencies? What patterns would they produce on certain plates? If, at least, well, some of them, and then for other elements, you'd have to use other things to, actually study the effects. But my point being is that if we could find out how each one actually responded to each frequency, because you might have one element that has different behaviors for every frequency. So we have 88 keys on the piano. That's the most comprehensive instrument, outside of harp, but harp piano is just that. It's just, we made it, just formed it different. But what I'm saying is, if we look at just those 88 keys, and we say we subject them to each of the frequencies that occur in the audible threshold, going from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. Within that audible range or audible threshold, how does each one actually behave from the perspective of sound? And going beyond their relation to being subjected to external sounds, are there sounds that are already internal to the elements themselves?
Wow.
That's already taking place.
Wow.
And looking at sound from that perspective, because now you more than likely be dealing with sounds that are outside of the audible threshold.
Yeah.
Outside of that, where you have infrasonic and ultrasonic.
So, but on your CD, with that concept.
So, periodic table of chemical elements.
Okay.
The periodic table of tonal elements, rather, was based on the possibilities of looking at sound from not only having each element, like we take one element, we subject it to all the 88 sounds, all the 88 frequencies, right? And we take another element, we do the same thing in different ways, all depending on what it is and what its natural form is. Then that means that we might have to, create the experiment in a different way so that we can see, well, how does this, since it's of a certain form, how does this actually relate to certain frequencies, each of those frequencies? And then to begin to understand how does that actually inform us in the way that we could use that to predict certain reactions quantitatively.
Wow.
And also, that's from an external perspective, but also there's the internal perspective, which was the perspective that I was very much interested in. Just like in science, they have these quantities they call extrinsic quantities. But they also have these quantities called intrinsic quantities. And it was the intrinsic quantities that I was really interested in knowing more about.
So I'm assuming, though, that you, with this concept,
Yes.
that you introduced them in your compositions.
I did. And in my compositions, I have liner notes.
Okay.
And I also have 7 originals. There's 10 selections altogether.
Okay.
And so I have 7 originals, and each of those originals were designed to be mutually reinforcing of the liner notes and the title of the periodic table of tonal elements.
Wow.
Because I was also saying that, when we get energy from the sun, we're not only receiving light from the sun, we're receiving sounds from the sun in the inaudible frequency range. Just like a bat can hear certain sounds and do certain things. I feel like this is what's actually happening in the inaudible frequency range, and the cellular ear has the ability to hear. The melanin in our skin is not only reacting with the light, it's interacting with sound, I believe.
Wow.
And so I felt like we were receiving sounds from the sun in the inaudible frequency range. So sure, somebody might say, well, we don't hear it, Dwayne, but I say, no, it's occurring in the inaudible frequency range, in the inaudible threshold.
Wow.
And also, not only receiving sounds from the sun, we're receiving information from the sun.
Okay.
And thirdly, I'm looking at the sun as a radio frequency broadcasting organism. And so we're actually sensitive to what that would be. And you would say, well, what would be some of those messages? Some of what I've already shared with respect to looking at blackness and looking at color as an energy, so that we can more properly understand blackness from a universal perspective as it relates to energy. And when I say universal, I'm talking about you looking at it as a science, so that instead of looking at color as just an identification-based thing only, we're looking at it aesthetically. Oh, this looks beautiful. This looks great.
Yeah.
I'm saying, if we looked at it from a functional perspective as it relates to carbon, we say, okay, carbon-based life forms.
Wow.
Carbon is what's responsible for producing or creating the entire field of organic life-based chemistry. So organic life-based chemistry is carbon-based life forms.
Wow.
Carbon in its naturally occurring form is black energy.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And so the main constituents of carbon are 6 protons, 6 electrons, 6 neutrons. So what I'm saying is, carbon, black energy, the black energy carbon is the portal through which life seeks to express itself as both particles and waves.
Wow.
And so what I'm saying is that if we look at it as an energy, if we look at blackness as an energy, we would now be in a better position to understand our relationship with the sun, and understand that, well, wait a second, could it be that our skin is acting as a solar panel?
Wow.
Just like the solar panels on all the buildings that we look at.
Yeah.
They
Wow.
contain dark
That's heavy.
pigments in order to convert the solar radiation into electrical energy using the photovoltaic effect, and so on. So, I'm saying that we're actually converting solar radiation or solar relevation into a chemical energy.
Wow.
This ethereal energy in mass form.
Wow.
In mass form.
It's,
So if light were to become a solid, if light itself were to become if light as a wave were to become a solid, the form it would take would be black melanin granules.
wow.
And so
And those principles are in these songs that you've written on the album?
yes, absolutely, because one of the tunes is called UC. In other words, the alphabet U, period, C period.
Okay.
In other words, UC.
I got you.
But the UC stands for ultraviolet communion. Because we're having communion with the sun in the ultraviolet range.
Wow.
And so when we're dealing with ultraviolet, a lot of people say, like, you hear people speaking, you hear people expressing, taking our consciousness to the higher frequency, but they don't have a reference when you ask them for, what do you mean higher frequencies? What frequency is it? But what I'm speaking about, I'm seeking to give a reference, a source, a means for us to actually look at this reference. And I'm saying, like, ultraviolet waves are actually higher frequencies. See, so at that point, that's on the other side of the visible spectrum. On the other side, you have infrasonic. On that side, the particles behave more as waves. But on the other side of the visible spectrum, you got the ultrasonic, and here the particles are the waves are behaving more like particles.
Wow.
And that's in the ultraviolet. So the ultraviolet is the higher frequency range, and we're taking in this higher frequency range.
Gotcha.
In physical form.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking the light in physically. In other words, when we interact with light, we're literally wearing the light because when we wear it, in other words, when we get darker, we're storing the light because we're being charged, just like when we charge a phone. We're storing the light, and then we're not only storing the light, but we're processing the light. We're able to think with it. We're able to come up with things. We're able to use it for self-generativity. We're self-referencing people, which is what I mean when I say carbon is the portal through which life seeks to express itself. And this is why we have this relationship through the compound melanin with the light of the sun, with the light and the sound of the sun, sound that we're getting from the sun's in the inaudible frequency range, which our solar panel skin, as a phenotype, is actually capable of taking in.
Now, all of this information that you just shared,
it's like an open system genetic phenotype. Yeah.
You intuited
pretty much.
This now.
Yeah.
Wow. So now this is a music show, but you also are a scientist.
Well, I look at myself in a way that allows me to process information consistently. Not just in the field, not just in one field, but in fields that I feel are related. And I feel like in the way that I'm looking at it, I'm seeking to approach it from this perspective of looking at the unification of different disciplines based upon Black energy. Like if I'm looking at chemistry, mathematics, chemistry, biology, mathematics, physics, genetics, epigenetics, astrology, astronomy. And because I feel like there's an actual science to astrology that's never really focused on, that has yet to be truly interpreted for what it is. But
so are these things? Is this thing getting stronger in you?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it is, because I feel like I'm developing a nomenclature that would allow me to place the subject matter, each of the different disciplines that I've just mentioned, into one context so that it becomes interdisciplinary. And as a result of it becoming interdisciplinary, now it's holistic.
Wow.
And if you can approach it as one thing, then now you're able to evolve on all fronts simultaneously.
Wow. Just
like if I take one rhythm, this is chemistry, right? This is biology, right? So that's genetics. That's mathematics. So you can keep on going.
Yeah.
So now you can take each one. Now you're developing a nomenclature. What is it that allows us to bring all of that together?
Wow.
And I'm saying we have to develop a nomenclature, and the most likely nomenclature that we can use, that the world has yet to see, that the universe has yet to see, I feel, is in understanding Black energy as we know it, because I think that it has a constructive use. A lot of times when people focus on things, they focus on the destructive aspects. If we talk about resonance, we're talking about it as with respect to breaking something up. Like, oh, you take a cup, you sing a certain pitch.
Yeah.
So they would say, oh, it's in resonance with it, so it was destroyed. But that's destructive resonance. But there's also constructive resonance.
Heavy.
And I say constructive resonance because of very simple things that we already know.
Yeah.
Like a tuning fork. So if you have a tuning fork that's tuned to 440, which is A, and another tuning fork that's tuned to 440A, if I prime mine by hitting it, it'll make it go off, then you don't have to prime yours or hit yours to make it go off. It'll just go off because it's already vibrating in sympathetic and constructive resonance.
Wow.
They're vibrating in constructive resonance with respect to each other. And so what I'm saying is, that's the form of resonance that I have in mind when I say that we're dealing with the sun. Not only we're receiving light from the sun, but sounds from the sun.
Okay.
And being a musician and being, it's the sonic aspect of that relationship.
Okay.
That interests me in terms of what can actually come out of that study.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we're winding down, but I wanted to ask, cause I wanted to, man, you gave us so much, man. When was the last time you played the piano?
Oh, about I'd say about 2-3 days ago. But prior to that, it's been a second. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, cause now when you You said prior to that it was a second.
Oh yeah.
Do you come right back to where you left off, or
Yeah.
do you have to?
Absolutely. I can go for vast stretches without, because the relationship between the mind and the physical is so strong. And this is what I think people have yet to take into consideration in addition to what they already understand, or know. And that is for me, the connection was because I'm experiencing music at such a high level of appreciation, I'm able to focus and concentrate so easily that, and see, because again, since the appreciation is so high, that, the emotions now they start to take on a significance of their own, because now it's becoming more powerful. So now you start to pick up vibes a lot easier.
Yeah.
You start to understand things more. And so because it's so enjoyable for me, I'm more focused on that aspect than I am focused on, can I do this? Or do I have enough energy to do this? Or am I focusing on the technique? That was never my focus.
Wow. But
It's because by me focusing on what's actually occurring, in terms of just what's coming in and feeling it with my soul, my heart, and my brain. Because when I improvise, a lot of times musicians might say, well, you're just feeling it, you're using your heart, you're something like this. I feel like I'm using both my heart and my brain.
Wow.
And I tell you why. Because when you're using your heart, you're basically giving your brain a different journey. And because your brain at that point, once it's taking a different journey, it's basically taking on different properties.
Gotcha.
And once it's taking on different properties, you're processing that information at a much more involved, a detailed level with much greater density.
Wow. So it doesn't frustrate you when you go long stretches and you don't have an instrument?
I mean, it doesn't. There are times when sometimes I'm just totally like, there's a lot coming to me. And so I'm like, wow, wish I was at an instrument right now, because things are really there. You can feel it. And there's other times when it's coming in,
So we need to get you a piano.
Well, it's, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
When I've gone without it, I've gone without it, and I can hear it in my mind. When I hear it in my mind, it's real.
Would you like a piano?
Yes.
Somebody's gonna give you one.
Sure.
So y'all hear that?
As long as it's super tuned.
Yeah.
And it's tunable.
Yeah.
And
What
it's
about a keyboard? You have a keyboard?
smaller? No, I don't have a keyboard or a
Could
piano.
you use a keyboard? Could you get the same thing from a keyboard?
That I get from a piano?
Well,
No.
Just in terms of expression, in terms of.
I mean, I could. Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if it was an electric. I wouldn't mind. Certainly wouldn't mind if it was a good, really good electric piano that was as closely approximated to an actual acoustic, for which there is no corollary. There is no equivalent. There's no electronic equivalent for what I feel I'm getting from an actual acoustic piano.
Yeah. Have you ever? Are you familiar with Warren Shad?
No.
Wow. Warren Shad, he's the person you should know. He's the first and only African-American piano manufacturer in the world. Right here in DC, from DC.
Beautiful.
His pianos were on Empire. His pianos, he has the Pope is in the Vatican. He has a piano in the Vatican. You got to get to know this guy. He has, and we talk.
What is his name?
Warren Shad. Shad Pianos.
Okay.
If you go to shadpianos.com.
Okay.
I'm giving you a plug, Warren.
Okay.
But he's a good friend of mine, and man, I wish we could get you a piano, man, and or keyboard, man, because we don't need you going no long stretches, man. We need you, we need you digging and putting that creative energy, man, into some music.
Sure.
Because you might got another CD in you somewhere.
Oh, for sure. Trillions of CDs, yeah. But I'm saying that I think that the reason I did that CD is because I was seeking to utilize something that I felt was culturally significant for us.
Indeed. And I ordered it. I ordered today on Amazon, so I'm waiting for it to come. So I can't wait to check it out. So, yeah, man.
Yeah, so yeah, that's all I'm saying. The same energy that's in our eyes, our eyes can be any color. Our eye can be brown, it can be hazel, it can be any other color, it can be black, but inside the center, it will always be black. Because those millions of rods and cones actually contains a sack of this super powerful black energy density potential that we call melanin, the melanin compound. If you take that out of those sacs, blindness is the end result.
Wow, that's heavy.
And the reason, and this is evidence of the fact that blackness contains all the colors, because in the center of everybody's eye, universally, it contains blackness for us to be able to see, because blackness as an energy, black color energy, because we're dealing with carbon as the reference. So when we talk about black energy, we're always using carbon as the
Wow,
reference.
that's heavy. Man, this cat.
And so I'm saying that it's in our eyes to be able to see, and blackness contains all of the colors. And by way of extension, the implication is that it contains all of the wavelengths, because wavelength is inversely related with frequency.
Wow.
So if it contains all the wavelengths, it likewise contains all of the frequencies. And so the same thing that we have in our ears, we have melanin there, you know,
Wow.
the cochlea, the saccule, the ampulla, the utricle, you know, all the melanin is being used in our ears. You take that out, deafness is the end result. So the same thing that's been placed in our eyes and in our ears, that's the same thing that's been strategically and clinically distributed all over our bodies in the form of melanin, because we have a pineal gland at the center of the brain. And this is based on one of my tunes that I did called PSP, pineal gland, the sun, and the pyramids. They're based on centers. The pineal gland is like considered the center of the brain. The sun is used as a reference for our solar system. So by way of the implications is that it's acting as a center. The pyramids are the exact center of the Earth's land mass. So that's actually the prerequisite for it actually acting as what people call the prime meridian. Even though I'm not a believer in meridians as such, but I'm saying they call it the prime meridian. And so what I'm saying is that was an amazing technology that I feel like even CERN is trying to approximate in their experiments with their laboratory. I don't even think it's even comes close to what the pyramids were actually, all of the things that the pyramids were designed to tap into, because Nikola Tesla was trying to tap into that, right down to where he located his laboratories. Like, what is the energetic arc displacement from the equator that the pyramid has? And then after having discovered what the harmonics are that actually set that up, he wanted to base his laboratory on a similar location to set up a similar harmonic to make certain energies accessible.
Wow.
By way of having set up that same harmonic in terms of the energetic arc displacement from the equator, the same relationship that the energetic arc displacement from the equator that the pyramid has, he wanted to set up the similar harmonic some other section of the world so he could access other energies to actually begin to look into other possibilities for what he was trying to do, because he was actually studying the pyramids. So that was something to do, you know, and so I'm saying it's so far beyond everything that people of recent, at least publicly, that we're supposed to, because obviously there's other technology that the defense contractors have access to.
Wow.
You know, that they don't, they don't declassify and make it commercial for the public to use.
Gotcha.
But what I'm saying is, I'm just saying that to emphasize just how far ahead the people were, the pyramid builders at that time were, to do what they were doing on that planet, on our planet, and others in and out of the solar system. So all I'm saying is that one of the many, many trillions of reasons that they also made that structure is because they were telling us that this is the center of the Earth's landmass. So, in other words, they were building that, they were modeling the building of the pyramids after the pineal gland.
Wow.
So, in other words, they were saying to every succeeding generation that the development of our pineal glands, what we socially refer to as the third eye, is paramount.
Wow.
They were saying that this is super paramount. And the reason I'm mentioning that in relationship to what I was talking about previously with respect to our skin and the blackness in our eyes and in our ears, because everybody has that from every culture.
Wow.
In other words, everybody from every culture has blackness in their eyes, regardless of the color that's around it. Blue, green,
Wow. Heavy. That's
hazel,
heavy.
whatever.
Heavy.
Because blackness contains all of the colors energetically as it relates to carbon, and as carbon relates to melanin as a compound. And as melanin as a compound is maintained in our skin as we process the light sound energy coming from the sun. So we're biosonoluminescent beings as we process this bio supercomputational quantum computer This is like the interface that allows us to do that with the entire universe.
Yes.
And the light waves that we have coming from the sun are like baby waves. And the blackness of space, those could actually be the black waves of space that actually, where all of the planets of different, trillions of planets of different types exist. They all exist in blackness. And they exist in that blackness like different rhythms. So if you're looking at each of those planetary structures and all those galaxies and superclusters of galaxies and so forth as tuning forks, each one of them have their own identity.
Wow.
Each one of them could have like 7 time signatures or key signatures or 7 time signatures going off at the same time,
Wow.
for their own identity. And so what I'm saying is they're all contained in blackness, black waves. I call them black waves. And those black waves are like the adult waves. So what we see with a caterpillar, for instance, this might seem radical based on what people know, but what I'm saying is if you look at a caterpillar, it goes to a cocoon. That cocoon literally looks like an egg, does it not? So that egg is basically like the caterpillar's transformation platform, cocoon system matrix, of which it is actually the solution to. So now after it goes to this cocoon, guess what? That caterpillar is being born again.
Woo.
In other words, that's the caterpillar's baptism.
Wow.
But this baptism, as opposed to another baptism that we don't really have to go into,
Yeah.
is kind of real in the sense that it corresponds to a real physical change of form.
Gotcha.
So that when it comes out, when it emerges from that cocoon, it comes out a transformer, of what people popularly call the butterfly,
Wow.
or the Buddha. The Buddha flies, And I've stated that years ago, But so what I'm saying is that cocoon was being born again. And so it was experiencing real physical change. So being born again, like that was its baptism. So what I'm saying is, likewise, I feel that we have the ability to experience ourselves as light bodies. And so through the interaction of the pineal gland with the solar panel's pigmented skin, or solar panel melanin-based pigmented skin. So when we take in that light energy solar charge from the sun, and we process that, and we get darker and darker, this enhances our ability to combat against disease, because it acts as a super antioxidant.
Wow.
And this is why you see people and you hear the expression black doesn't crack. Well, it's found on a scientific basis, because it's based on the fact that it's actually fighting against disease. You're talking about a uniform distribution of stable free radicals. So, we're taking in an entire, we're dealing with an orchestra. And we're the conductors of this orchestra that's actually occurring, because the instrument, what I have learned very uniquely within my own experience, is that we are the ultimate instruments. We are the instrument.
Wow.
And we have to learn how to utilize our instruments and refine our musical instruments in the most amazing way.
Gotcha.
To restore the connection of that current that we should already be a part of. That momentum that we should already be, that energetic momentum, that ethereal energetic momentum that we should already be a part of. And we should be able to activate that at will. So this on our skin, just like our normal eyes require blackness in order to be able to see, because blackness includes all of the colors as well as the white light. So what I'm saying is, that's why we see with it, because we can determine all of these things, because our eyes are acting as a light prism.
Wow.
To process all the things that we see, and blackness is a prerequisite for that. There's no other color that can actually act as a prerequisite to be able to see. The eye can't be red, the eye's not going to be, in order to see all of the colors. So blackness contains that, because it contains all the wavelengths and it contains all of the frequencies.
Gotcha.
The sounds. So what I'm saying is, just like the pineal gland, the so-called third eye that we refer to socially, it also has cones and rods. And guess what those cones and rods are related to?
What's that?
The solar panel
Yes.
pigmented skin, carbon-based melanin compound skin that we have.
Wow.
Guess what the eye for that pineal gland is to see throughout time and space?
Okay.
The skin, our pigmented skin, is acting like cones and rods for the pineal gland to see throughout all of space.
Wow.
This way, everything that's happening internally can be distributed to the outside. So all the neuronal activity that's occurring within the brain can actually, the pineal gland's job is to send all that neuronal activity that's occurring internally with all the 12 brain centers. The locus coeruleus, the substantia nigra, the parabrachialis, the paraneugralis, the ventricapularis acroleus, the nervus urgeni, the mesocephaly, the pons centralis origis, the tegmentii pediculopontis, the medialis dorsomotor, the retroambigualis, the brachialis or the peribrachialis. Which one did I say? So what I'm saying is distribute all of the trillions of functions that are associated with each of the individual 12 brain centers. I'm saying the pineal gland's job as what I'm calling the 13th brain center, not chakra, but 13th brain center, because it also acts as a chakra. But I'm saying, acting as a 13th brain center, it distributes all that neuronal activity to the outside of the body, utilizing the color energy distribution potential of the carbon-based melanin compound to actually distribute it to the outside of the body.
Wow.
So now all that neuronal activity can now sit on the outside of the body in the form of our melanin compound, and the neuronal activity, not in the form of just particles, but in the form of waves, can experience amplification directly in the sun without mediation. We don't need mediation.
Wow.
So we don't have to go through one person
Gotcha.
to experience a divine potential that we already have
Wow.
for an immortal potential, because we all have access to the sun.
Beautiful.
You see, because that's essentially what Superman was about. No, really.
I believe
That was their fantasy of being us. See, because Superman gets all of his strength from having absorbed the solar radiation. And he's got mostly all the superpowers.
Okay.
But because he's absorbed all of the solar radiation, he's able to do all these other things. But at no point do they show where he's actually getting a tan. All the way to being brown and black, like a normal person would when they're, dealing with the sun.
Yeah.
Well, those superpowers are based on absorbing the solar radiation, which we already do. That was their fantasy of being what we're literally capable of in real life. So eventually these capabilities are going to be reestablished, and they will reassert themselves.
Wow.
At the level of normalcy. So Superman is like the Jesus of Hollywood. Jesus was like the Superman of the Bible. That's why they're describing him, Revelations 1:14 or Daniel chapter 7 verse 9, and saying like, oh, he's described as this and this. It's really us.
Yeah.
We already have that. So we don't have to go through any one individual to do that, because all of us already have that divine potential in us. And this is why the sun features us on a daily basis. We're the stars. The sun is technically a star.
Yeah.
And since particles and waves are related, we could resolve that and say, well, wait a second here. The sun is made up of particles as well as waves.
Okay.
So wait a second. Not only are we looking at a star, we could be looking at the planet of light.
Wow.
And this is what we're able to relate to. And so the sun is actually a form of a light body.
Beautiful. So on that point,
And we have the ability to transform into light bodies just like the caterpillar did into the butterfly.
Yeah.
So nature's teaching us the language of light.
Beautiful, man. Hey, man, you gave us a lot to digest.
Yeah.
And I'm very grateful, man, to be able to share you with the world.
Sure. Sure.
And
and
on my platform.
even though I know some of the ideas are different and unique to some of what people may encounter.
That's okay.
But I feel comfortable with the fact,
No, man, it's beautiful because you've shared some of this. Like we in a car, and you shared this, and I'm like, the larger body needs to hear this and process it how they will. But anyway, man, how can people, if they want to, because everybody said, well, how's Dwayne doing, man? We, all the cats, man. So if they want to, how do they get in contact with you? You don't have to give your number out, but are you on any social media, anything?
I'm not on any social media right now. I have yet to put up my own website and this type of thing. So.
All right. Well.
Yes.
Can they hit me up and then?
Of course.
Okay. All right.
Course.
Cool.
Of course. That would be nice.
Yeah. So and
until
man,
I get everything up. Yeah.
Yeah. Until you get everything up, and hopefully, man, somebody can, man, get you. donate or bless, not bless. Which word you say?
Be graded.
Be great.
Or be gratings.
Be great you with a piano
Yeah.
or
Yes.
piano like keyboard or something, man. Because
Sure.
we want you to keep creating music, man.
Mm-hmm.
Because because that's especially in this time that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I want to personally thank you, man, and I'm honored, man, to have you here. I'm not, I feel berated to have you here. Not berated.
Be graded?
Be graded.
Yes.
Yeah, because, I'm the kind of person, I've always been this way, that I see the greatness in people.
Sure.
And so I've always saw that in you, man, and I want people to know, yo, it's like a cat. You hear this cat that can play. You're like, yo, man, you gotta check this cat out.
Right.
But so I'm grateful that you were willing to trust this platform.
Yes.
To share your message, man.
Oh,
So,
it's my pleasure. Furthermore, I can say in my own personal life that I have been inspired. I've definitely been inspired to actually really, really go at what the universe has given me insofar as really pursuing my gifts, the genius that the universe has allowed me to access, which is a genius that I feel that all of us actually have. We just have to tap into it.
no doubt.
And I think the first step towards that interaction involves understanding who we are energetically and identifying our culture
Beautiful.
from an energetic perspective.
Beautiful. These are the things that legends are made of. This is a conversation in jazz. We've been listening to,
Black energy.
yes, the great Mr. Dwayne Adell, the wonderful Mr. Dwayne Adell. This is a conversation in jazz, and we'll see you on the next one.